we're not using the $3.8 billion in presidential drawdown authority that remains to send additional air defense and interceptors, and you yourself chose to not attend the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. Mr. Secretary, why not use the already appropriated presidential drawdown authority to deliver defense material badly needed by Ukraine?
Well, Senator, as you know, the presidential drawdown authorities 71 through 74 still apply, and they are still flowing. There's some in reserve. To your question about my statement, and I served with a lot of NATO allies in Afghanistan as well. Incredibly capable Canadians, Brits, and Australians and others. And grateful for them. And I've gotten to know a lot of them in this process going to Brussels. Amazing people, amazing countries.
Thus, I was struck, Mr. Secretary.
But we also wore a patch on our shoulder that said ISAF, International Security Assistance Force. And you know what the joke was? That it stood for I Saw Americans Fighting. Because what ultimately was a lot of flags, was not a lot of on-the-ground capability. You're not a real coalition, you're not a real alliance, unless you have real defense capability and real armies that can bring those to bear. And that's a reality that Europe is waking up to quickly, and we're glad, because they're our friends, and we want them to be safe and free and secure. And sometimes that takes true talk and tough love, and they've responded very well to that because we want them to succeed. And
Mr. Secretary, let's just make clear for the record that our military partners in Afghanistan included many who served and died.
Patriots, listen up. Today we're going to break it down, unfiltered, unafraid, and unapologetically American. While DC squabbles and weak-kneed politicians keep kicking the can down the road with continuing resolutions, there's one man at the helm of the Pentagon who's at least standing up and telling the hard truth. The Department of Defense needs a real budget, not these stopgap band-aids. I'm talking about the Secretary of Defense. Now, we may not agree on everything, and Lord knows I've been critical when it's deserved, but in this moment, I'm telling you straight. He's right to demand robust funding, right to support our military readiness, and right to say enough is enough with these endless games in Congress. Let's start right there. A full-year continuing resolution? That's political cowardice masquerading as governance. It weakens our military, slashes buying power, delays modernization, and hurts the very readiness that keeps our soldiers safe and our enemies in check. General Kane spelled it out clearly in his testimony. And guess what? The Secretary backed it up without flinching. That's what leadership looks like. Real leadership doesn't wait for political winds to shift. It takes a stand, especially when the defense of our nation is on the line. Congress is playing games while our enemies are sharpening their knives. China's building hypersonic missiles. Iran's funding terror proxies. Russia still dropping drones on Ukrainian civilians night after night. Meanwhile, some in Congress are acting like balancing the checkbook is more important than national survival. Priorities, people. Now let's talk about Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, just a quick question to clarify something. Is a full-year continuing resolution bad for the Department of Defense? Just yes or no?
Sir, a full-year continuing resolution is never preferable for any department, especially the Department of Defense. Not preferable.
And I know, General Kane, I don't need to ask you because your written testimony specifically says routinely operating under continuing resolutions lowers buying power, results in less deployable capital, makes it harder for industry to make long-term investments. And is it your commitment, Mr. Secretary, that you'll work with us to achieve a full-year appropriation? You'll submit the budget documents necessary, work with us closely, that we'll be able to do our work so you can do yours.
Senator, we are committed to working with you to make sure the Defense Department gets as robust a budget as possible where we can meet the threats of today and tomorrow.
Thank you. I'll just say at the outset for all my colleagues, I am increasingly concerned that there is a threat that some believe they can best govern by continuing resolution, reconciliation, and rescission, and not ever actually have us appropriate. So I look forward to working with you to avoid that outcome, which I think would both disregard the role of Congress and put all of us at greater risk. It seems to me clear with regards to Ukraine that Vladimir Putin has no serious intent of negotiating. He continues to attack civilian targets night after night with hundreds and hundreds of drones. The Ukrainians have just carried out a spectacular attack against military targets. And it seems to me concerning that the 2026 request eliminates aid to Ukraine entirely. At the same time, the Senate has a strongly bipartisan bill led by Senator Graham and Senator Blumenthal to impose more sanctions on Russia, and many senators of both parties want to provide more aid to Ukraine. Would you agree, Mr. Secretary, that the United States should use every tool it has at its disposal, including additional sanctions, to pressure Russia to come to the table to negotiate a just and lasting peace for the war in Ukraine?
Senator, every tool at our disposal? No. We have a lot of tools in a lot of places.
Let me be more narrow.
Let me
be more narrow then. You said, and I'll take some exception to this, that our European allies cannot freeload off the United States in perpetuity. My impression is that Article 5 of the NATO treaty was only invoked once. It was after 9/11. And a significant number of our European allies and partners deployed to Afghanistan alongside us and suffered significant combat casualties. In the first 2 years of the war in Ukraine, a war of Russian aggression, 50 other countries stepped forward, deployed military support, delivered materiel, provided financial and operating support, and at regular meetings of the Defense Contact Group, your predecessor led that process of deploying military assistance. What message do you think it sends? That as Ukraine continues to suffer day after day of punishing attacks on civilian centers, we're not using the $3.8 billion in presidential drawdown authority that remains to send additional air defense and interceptors, and you yourself chose to not attend the Ukraine Defense Contact Group. Mr. Secretary, why not use the already appropriated presidential drawdown authority to deliver defense material badly needed by Ukraine?
Well, Senator, as you know, the presidential drawdown authorities 71 through 74 still apply, and they are still flowing. There's some in reserve. To your question about my statement, and I served with a lot of NATO allies in Afghanistan as well, incredibly capable Canadians, Brits, and Australians and others, and grateful for them. And I've gotten to know a lot of them in this process going to Brussels. Amazing people, amazing countries.
Thus, I was struck, Mr. Secretary.
But we also wore a patch on our shoulder that said ISAF, International Security Assistance Force. And you know what the joke was? That it stood for I Saw Americans Fighting. Because what ultimately was a lot of flags, was not a lot of on-the-ground capability. You're not a real coalition, you're not a real alliance, unless you have real defense capability and real armies that can bring those to bear. And that's a reality that Europe is waking up to quickly, and we're glad, because they're our friends, and we want them to be safe and free and secure. And sometimes that takes true talk and tough love, and they've responded very well to that because we want them to succeed. And
Mr. Secretary, let's just make clear for the record that our military partners in Afghanistan included many who served and died. Our Danish partners and allies on a per capita basis
don't try to make it look like I don't care about the investments of our partners. Of course I do.
Mr.
I recognize
Secretary,
that there were lives lost from other countries.
Of
but
course
the bulk of the effort was Americans, and an alliance needs to include other countries and be more balanced.
Mr. Secretary,
to be a real alliance.
As I pointed out in my opening comments, our partners and allies have stepped up, have invested, have engaged in the defense of Ukraine, and so should we. We should not be pursuing a ceasefire and a negotiated resolution to the war in Ukraine at any cost. Peace through strength means actually using our strength, continuing to support Ukraine, and securing a lasting peace. Putin will only stop when we stop him. And the best way to stop him is indeed through a stronger NATO. I look forward to the NATO summit. I agree with you that a significant investment by NATO in our collective security is a great investment, but we cannot abandon Ukraine. That would put us significantly at a strategic disadvantage. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You know how I feel about American taxpayer money. We shouldn't be the world's ATM. But when it comes to stopping tyrants like Vladimir Putin, we cannot afford to sit back and signal weakness. The Secretary is being strategic. He knows we have tools, military aid, sanctions, diplomatic pressure, and he's not afraid to use them. That's what peace through strength really means. Not endless war, not blind spending, but targeted, forceful action that tells the world we're still the leader of the free world. Some folks say we should just pull back and let Europe handle it. Well, guess what? Europe is stepping up. Our NATO allies are actually putting skin in the game this time. Troops, money, arms, and yes, real casualties. That didn't happen overnight. It happened because of American leadership, because we had a secretary who wasn't afraid to tell our allies, it's time to pull your weight. And guess what? They listened. Now some folks are out there yelling, why aren't we using all $3.8 billion in drawdown authority right this second? Let me ask you something. Do you throw your entire stockpile into one battle, or do you reserve some for the fights that are coming? That's called strategy. The Secretary made it clear. Aid is still flowing. The authority is intact. And some is being held in reserve because this isn't a sprint, it's a war of endurance. If we want to keep Ukraine in the fight, we've got to be smart, not just loud. I love this part. The Secretary didn't sugarcoat it, he straight up said it. You're not a real coalition unless you have real armies with real capability. Amen. This isn't the time for flower speeches and global kumbaya sessions. We need iron, firepower, logistics, and boots on the ground. And you know what? Sometimes it takes tough love to get your allies moving. That's what leadership is, not begging, but demanding action. That's the kind of straight talk that wins wars and keeps peace. And I respect him for saying it. Let's be crystal clear. Abandoning Ukraine isn't saving money. It's inviting the next war to our doorstep. Weakness invites aggression. And if we fold now, we give Putin a green light. Then what? Taiwan's next. The Baltics? Israel? Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of strength. And we've got that strength, folks. What we need is the will to use it smartly, strategically, and unapologetically. That's what the Secretary of Defense is fighting for. Not just dollars on a spreadsheet, but the survival of our way of life. So to those out there bashing the Secretary for not grandstanding at every hearing or not emptying every account immediately, I say this: strategy beats slogans. And right now, the man in charge of our military is showing real backbone. He's demanding the budget our warriors deserve, calling out unserious governance, and holding our allies to account. Here at Right View Nation, we believe in truth, clarity, and strength. And while we'll always hold leaders accountable when they get it right, we say so. So yeah, today we stand with the Secretary of Defense. Not because he's perfect, but because he's telling the truth, playing it smart, and putting America's defense where it belongs. First, like if you stand for real defense. Comment if you're tired of DC gridlock. Subscribe for more bold truth from Right View Nation. Share if you still believe in peace through strength. This is Right View Nation. No filters. No apologies. Just the truth. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.